Well, I'm here with Carol Alleman, and we are just talking about her life and how long I've known you. And it's been, I said like 12, 15, and you said longer.
Could be. I think it could be.
And if anybody's watching this on the YouTube, you'll be able to actually see one of her, it's kind of a plaque bronze that's in the back of her on the side. So she does sculpture. Unique, there's nothing really like your sculpture. Definitely nothing in my gallery. But even I would go to say that I don't see anything like that out there, period. Yeah.
There's a few that they're not the same, but there's a few people in the last, I would say, 10 years
Yeah.
creating bronze in the vessel form,
Yeah.
but not with cutouts or any intricacy.
Yeah. I mean, to me, yours have this spirituality to the sculpture for sure. And I'm sure there is too. I mean, I have no doubt. And I think we're going to delve into that a little bit.
Probably. It's hard to get away from that when you talk to me.
Yeah, well, that's good. I mean, it shows in your sculpture for sure. I
Yeah.
mean, there's definitely, I don't know, emotion for sure.
I call it an ethereal quality.
Yeah, for sure it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially with the birds, those I think particularly are.
Years ago when I did shows, this is going way, way back when I did shows at Loveland.
Yes.
Remember when Loveland Sculpture in the park was a big deal?
I think it still is.
And I don't know, I haven't been there for a very long
Yeah.
time. But it would be so fun because people would be like immediately drawn to one piece.
Yeah.
And they would go like crazy, or I don't know why. I don't think I would choose this piece, but I just keep wanting to go back to it. And it would sort of tell me secrets about what's going on in their life.
In their lives.
Yeah, seriously. So it's kind of fun, but yeah.
Yeah, so where did it all begin? You were from Pennsylvania, that part I know,
I'm
right?
from Pennsylvania.
And where about in Pennsylvania?
Lancaster County, farmland, land of the Amish.
Yeah, so
Very conservative.
is that eastern Pennsylvania?
It's South Central.
South Central.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Lovely place to grow up. Very, very conservative. My world was very, very small. We lived on a 5-acre farm.
Oh, that's cool.
And my father worked at a meat manufacturing plant about a half a mile away. And the farm it was our work. It was our job. It was our life. We didn't have much money, and that's what we lived on.
And so he worked at the meat plant. Was he processing meat, that kind of stuff?
Processing meat, slaughtering meat.
Yeah.
He was the manager, the supervisor of the plant.
Yeah.
He had worked there since a teenager. He has a
strong guy then.
Yeah.
This is a guy that is definitely has a sense of who he is, I bet.
Well, he's no longer on this plane, but marvelously humble, humorous, kind,
Nice.
most generous soul you'd ever meet. Not highly educated, like his language was not polished.
No.
And sometimes
Maybe it was for the meat
my mother was
plant.
sort of sneaky. Yeah, probably for the meat plant. But
Your mom would
pretty
do
much-
what? You
she would sort of reprimand him afterwards, saying, "Warren, you know better English than that."
Yeah.
But
And what was her story?
she was a licensed practitioner nurse, an LPN.
Yeah.
But she didn't practice in the early years of my life. She was very ill. And so that added another dimension of my childhood, too, I think, that is very unique. She suffered from uncontrolled severe epilepsy for quite a long time. And not that she wasn't well and didn't work very, very hard. She did.
Mm-hmm.
But there were many periods of time where she wasn't able to.
I'm sure.
And because that was our bread and butter, we learned how to work and do chores well beyond our years at a very early age. And our world really was that farm.
I bet it was very scary because when she has an epileptic fit, you don't know what's going to happen.
It was pretty frightening because I think the first one I remember, I was 4 or 5. And I was sure she died. And I didn't know any different, of course, at the time. But we learned quickly what to do and how to do it. And we had our list of instructions. And that's what we did. I think probably the most, frightening part as a young child was the responsibility we felt to notice when it was coming. to catch the fall, to react quickly.
And if it didn't happen, it was your fault that
and
it
if
didn't.
it didn't happen, yeah, exactly. She might die if we don't do it on time.
Yeah,
she might
that's a
die
lot
if
of
we don't do
pressure.
it correctly. So there was a lot of that. And, my dad was so immensely talented, creative in a very different way than I would say I'm creative. He was this massive, incredible efficiency expert. I mean, all around our home, you could see little things that Dad created to solve a problem. He could build anything in wood, beautifully so. And he saved everything because you never know when you're going to need it.
Yeah, well, he was a Depression era baby.
Exactly.
Was he a World War II vet too?
No, he was not a veteran.
Yeah.
Not a veteran, but he learned from a very early age that,
save.
Nothing is junk. Nothing is
turn
junk.
your lights off, turn the water off.
Exactly.
Save everything, including that aluminum.
And in fact, when we cleared out the estate, when my mother passed away 4 or 5 years ago, and we had to clear out the whole farm, and that's like 65 years worth of accumulated stuff.
Right.
It was an overwhelming task, but one of the things I photographed before I left was all the latches around the farm, all the door latches that he created out of something that he saved. They were all different, and they all did the job beautifully, but they were so unique. And it's just,
that's interesting.
Yeah, just an interesting thing I wanted to capture.
Do you think that's where your creativity came from?
Probably some of it. Yeah, he would never have considered himself creative, but he was very creative and just in a different way.
Yeah. Because every one of your sculptures is very detailed, I think, and you're very careful about patinas and things like that. Even the way your sculpture is handled, you want it to be handled in a certain fashion with gloves and different things.
Well, you're kind to describe it that way. Some people would not be as kind, saying I'm over the top, but
no, I think it's your right. It's your art.
Yeah.
You want it displayed a certain way. I mean, it's who you are. I mean, your sculptures wouldn't be that way if you weren't like that, I guess.
The whole patina process just totally fascinates me. It always has. And it's, of course, the most intricate part of my work. So I spend way more money than most bronze sculptors on the patina.
Right.
In fact, many of the foundries that I worked with over the years say, this is crazy. You can't sell this. You can't spend that much on it. Well, that would be my job.
Yeah.
Your job is to do what I'm paying you to do.
Right.
But it's always a discussion. How do you plan to sell this? That's not what I'm worried about.
Yeah.
Here's what it needs to look like.
You have a certain visualization
Exactly.
it needs to be.
This is what it needs to look like.
And were you as a kid creative, and were you making art or sculpting or doing any of that kind of stuff?
There really
or
wasn't
were you
any time.
I was about to say, or were you just so damn busy?
Yeah, we had a lot of chores every day. And
did you have cattle and cows to milk and chickens to feed and that kind of stuff?
And sheep, and we had 1,500 chickens that we gathered the eggs for twice a day, every day.
Oh, yeah. That'll do it.
Yeah, that'll do it. Yeah.
That really will do it.
And the garden and the orchard and then the repairs on the farm. So there was just always something. So, in our bedroom, there's a small chalkboard that my parents mounted on the wall. And our house was really tiny. Mm-hmm. And this chalkboard, I say it was our bedroom, but it's funny because my sister and I, in our adult years, realized we've always called it our bedroom that I share with my sister, but it was really a hallway.
No, that's funny.
And it's funny how those things shift for you in adulthood. You say, gosh, it really was a hallway. There were 3 doors.
Oh, that's funny.
And you had to walk through it to get any other place in the upstairs. So it was a hallway.
Oh, that's funny.
But
which meant your room had to be clean.
Not necessarily.
No?
But there wasn't any place, really. There wasn't really that much space to clutter in. We just didn't have that much.
Yeah. So you had this chalkboard, and did you draw on that? And
I would always be drawing something on that. Or I would somehow manage to get hold of construction paper and cut stuff out and decorate the room. And my mother always commented about that. I'd line up the dolls and pretend I'm teaching them, how to make this, how to make that. But I don't really remember doing a lot of it. I really don't. I think I was about 12 when I was spending time with my aunt. It was a lovely, lovely woman and very creative. She was very creative. Mm-hmm. And she somehow sensed some spark in me. I have no idea how. But one day we were spending a little bit of time with her. She lived on the farm my grandparents owned. It was a 250, 300-acre farm, big farm. And she and her husband lived on half of the farmhouse and my grandparents on the other half. We were spending some time with her. Now, she had 5 children, a busy woman. They had hired help. She cooked a full hot lunch for them every day.
Right.
She was a marvelous cook and baker. And she was always, her house was always a mess, but she always had time for something creative or chat about something. She just had this lovely, lovely spirit about her. We just loved her dearly. And so she decided we could take time to take a walk down through the meadow to the creek. And now and then she'd take us swimming in the creek. And we were on one of these walks, and she might like stop and say, "Oh, let's help this little daisy. Its petals tucked." And she'd untuck it, and just sweet little things like that. And we came back to the house that day. We gathered the eggs. We were getting ready to get all the meal prepared in the kitchen for the men to come in for lunch. And she said, "How would you like to paint?" And I said, "I don't know how to paint." She said, "Maybe you don't know how." She said, who told you don't know how? I said, "I've never painted." And she said, "That's why I'm asking, would you like to paint?" And I said, "Sure, I'd love to paint." So she went up to the attic, brought out this ancient easel, a canvas, and oil paints, no less, and set them up in the pantry, the kitchen. And she said, "There, you just have yourself a good time while I put on lunch." I said, "I don't know how to paint. I don't know what to paint." She said, "Well, we just gathered the eggs, paint the chickens." So I painted this red hen with these eggs and this chicks.
Right.
And it was just the best. She couldn't get me out of that pantry. Crazy, terrible painting, of course. I still have it because it's such a great memory.
And you were 12 when you did this?
I think I was about 12 when I did this. And so that was a really special night. So that, I would say, would be the only person that really even talked with me about.
Encouraged you.
Yeah. And, my parents were not in that realm. I was never in an art museum until I was in college.
Yeah, me too.
It's just the way life unfolded, you know.
And so did you continue to go over to your aunt's and do creative stuff like that?
There was no time.
It was literally that one time you got exposed.
That was the one time. That was the only time. And then she did talk to my parents about trying to encourage them to say, I think she really wants to create, maybe an art class or something. And well, there's no money for that,
Yeah.
But eventually she convinced my mother to enroll me in this art class that I was so not prepared for. It was kids my age. I was probably maybe 13 at the time. And it was a really big deal. I mean, everybody in the family, I can't believe you're allowed to take art lessons, It was a really, really big deal. So I felt a lot of pressure,
I bet.
And she took me to the class, and it was so humiliating. It was just so humiliating because all the other kids there had clearly taken lessons for years.
Right.
I didn't know what any of the materials were. I didn't bring any materials. I didn't have any materials. So it ended up being a really humiliating experience. And sadly, the teacher was not intuitive enough to understand that.
Right.
So I would say I probably felt shamed, to even attend it. And then even more so when I came home to have to, tell my parents that you spent all that money and I didn't do very well,
And what did they say when you said that?
Really not much. I never took lessons again. That's for certain. But
they didn't discourage you, but they didn't encourage you.
Right. And there weren't really any ways that I could see that for them to encourage me. It wasn't our life.
But it's interesting they did that art class. There clearly was something they were seeing or somebody was seeing.
Yeah.
You should do this.
And I think my Aunt Eleanor was really, they had a deep and warm respect for her. And they wanted to do well by their children. My mother clearly felt education was very, very important. That was always very clear. Now, having said that, we never had time to do homework. We did homework on the bus, and that's how much you got done.
Yeah.
What you learned at school, you learned in the classroom. That was just the way of it.
And was part of that just because by the time you finished all the chores and do everything, you're kind of exhausted. You have to go to bed early because you got to get up early to do all the chores before you leave for school?
Well, we rarely went to bed early, but we had family jobs on top of the farm work. Just to make money. Like every Monday night, we had a family job that we started. The four of us started right after school. And we finished anywhere between 10 o'clock and midnight.
And what was that doing? What was that?
We were actually preparing the bags that the processed meat would be put into at the processing plant on Tuesdays. So my father would leave a list at lunchtime on the table, how many hundreds or thousands of each type of bag he needed.
Jesus.
And we'd get started on it, and we'd take a quick break for a dinner and go right back in the cellar and keep at it until we were finished. And when we were finished, you're finished. But we knew clearly there would be absolutely no homework until Tuesday morning on the bus. That was a given every week. It wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, you didn't.
It wasn't
no
going to
time
happen.
or energy or whatever. Plus, as a kid, who wants to go after homework when you done bags for 2 hours?
You've been to school all day. You come home. You have a 20-minute break, and get at it. And then the other family job we did was people would pay my father to cut up like a half a beef or a full beef.
Yeah.
Or side of beef and whatever.
Or deer,
anything that they would need to have done, and we would do it, and it would be a family job again, and we'd each have our part in the process, but it would be again a 3 or 4 hour evening stint.
So extra money that didn't have to go through the plant. He had the expertise.
Exactly.
You had the expertise after a while, I'm sure.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah.
So you're a vegan now, are you?
No, I'm actually not, but we did really well on that little farm. It's amazing. Really fertile land.
Yeah.
The amount of crops that we brought in was just incredible.
But it is interesting because you have a very small house, very modest. He's got a full-time job. That sounds like it's a pretty good job. And all are working hard and producing the farm. It sounds like it was actually, there was there was more money than you might think. Seems like, and they paid for art classes once.
Well, it's funny because, we know, and even looking at the records that we found out, we know they never had much money at all. In fact, it amazes us. How did they raise 4 kids? However,
that'll do it too, 4 kids. But
we never knew we were poor.
Yeah.
And I give my parents such great credit for that because we never realized that we were poor because we were always sharing with everyone.
Yeah.
My mother was constantly inviting people to stay for dinner, and we would always roll. I say, "Is she crazy? There's not enough food." Every single time there would be leftovers. Yeah. It was just like that all the time.
And 4 kids is a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah. No. Yeah. On a one salary.
Yeah.
Even in Lancaster. So.
Yeah, seriously.
And so when you got to the point of getting close to college, had you made a decision of kind of what you might want to do?
I have no idea where it came from, but I still held that notion ever since I did that painting that I was going to be an artist.
Mm.
And I was ill my junior year of high school, and I missed half the school year. Mm. And I was tutored at home. And that was an interesting experience because it's the first time that I was able to really read a novel, sort of for pleasure. I mean, it was the teacher's way of tutoring me through that process when I wasn't able to physically be at school. And I remember I read Catcher in the Rye. And I thought, wow,
I bet.
This is so fun. I really like reading.
And did you have to do less chores and things too because you weren't physically able to?
I wasn't physically allowed to do any chores for months.
So that was probably
I was bedridden.
That was in a weird way a gift, right?
It was a gift. And and the other assignment the teachers gave me, I had like all this long list of these novels to read, and I had to write about them. And I realized, wow, I really enjoy writing. This is fun. This is so much fun. I hardly wanted to go back to school. It was so much fun. But, and I had just the right English teacher that year that really was very, very helpful because until that point, I really didn't think I was academically capable at all. And
why would you?
Yeah,
all
and
you've done is work,
see
manual labor, basically.
Yeah, differently. He said, I didn't even think I could possibly go to college. How could that happen? And he said, you absolutely need to go to college. And he said, you're an intelligent young girl, and I'm going to help you all I can. And he did. And he had a really huge impact on me. But after that year, I went back the second half of my junior year. And up until that point, because my parents were musically inclined, that was their artistic expression, we all played musical instruments, which was really funny because we never had time to practice.
Yeah.
So we were constantly sight reading. And our piano teacher, to pay her, we did trade. We'd give her, so many quarts of peaches or, frozen peach, whatever they wanted. And they were very dear family friends. So she continued to teach us piano. and listened to us sight read every week for years. And she said in our dolly, she goes, kids were the best sight readers.
I bet. That's all you knew how to do.
She said, it just amazed me. You never gave up. You just kept coming back and sight reading and sight reading. It was very funny. But that year, at the end of that year, I told them that I didn't want to take music anymore. I was playing the clarinet and I hated it. I asked to play the oboe when I was, asked to choose an instrument. And They said, well, the oboe is too difficult. You have to play clarinet first, and then you can transfer to the oboe. I said, well, I don't want to play the clarinet. I want to play the oboe. So, well, first you start with the clarinet. So I never wanted that clarinet, and I never really wanted to even learn to play it. So I would go to band during school hours and sight read, and that's all I ever did.
Yep.
So I said, okay, it's my senior year. I'd like to take art as an elective instead of music, and I can't do both. So I did, and they allowed me permission to do that, which was a big thing for Mother and Dad. And the art teacher would give us a sketchbook, and we needed to sketch every week and then turn it in weekly. And early on, I turned in my sketchbook and all these trees. And she typed in broad, bold letters across 2 pages of my sketchbook, mind you. No more trees, far too trite. So I didn't draw any more trees.
That's interesting. What did you draw?
All kinds of like crazy things. And I drew cartoon things and anything in my environment, but nothing. I mean, again, all the other students had taken art as an elective for several years. It was sort of like reminiscent of that little art class I took.
I'm sure.
I know nothing. And the art teacher was, how do I put it? She just, again, intuitively, she didn't get it. She didn't understand that I had an inner longing to learn this, and I needed to start at first base. That's all.
Yeah.
I just needed help. That's all. And encouragement. And I went to her. Back then, the guidance counselors would always handle all your college applications. So I decided I was going to art school. And I went to her and asked her to write a letter of recommendation. And she smiled at me and she said, honey, you are in no way prepared nor intended to be an art major.
No, that's the worst.
I'm not able to do that for you.
Yeah.
So I was very, very disappointed, of course.
Sure.
But I went to the guidance and I said, I still want to apply to art school without the recommendation. He said, well, you can't do that. I said, that's what I want to do.
Yep.
So he sent the transcripts, and all my transcripts showed incomplete for my junior year, because this was during the senior year.
Yes.
And it was incomplete because I was sick for half the year and I hadn't finished all of the final papers. So he just sent the transcripts with incomplete. So naturally, I didn't get accepted at any of the 3 colleges I applied to. So my grandfather was actually a college graduate. I think they called it, what do they call it? A normal school, I think they called it back then. I don't know. Anyway, the equivalent of a college degree.
Yeah. And
his children were all educated. And he came from a higher economic status family than what my mother or what my parents were. And he had all kinds of connections to Penn State. So he said, well, let me make a call. So he called somebody, I don't even know who it was. And next thing you know, I was offered placement at this little remote campus of Penn State if I would be willing to go there. It was called Mont Alto. I'd never heard of it. Didn't have any idea where it was. And I knew that if I didn't say yes to that, chances are I'd never go to college.
Yeah.
So I decided to say yes. So I said yes. And then I remember it was like a month or so, I said, Grandpa, where is this school? He said, don't worry, I'll show you.
And where was it anyway? I don't know.
It was in the middle of nowhere. It was, actually, I don't even know where it was. I don't even know where it was in Pennsylvania. It's in Pennsylvania, of course. Yeah. But I don't even remember exactly where it was. Out in the woodlands. But lo and behold, I get there and realize it's a forestry school.
Oh, my God. Huh.
So, tiny, tiny remote campus with all these forestry students. And, of course, I quickly become enamored with one of the forestry majors.
Yeah.
And he's having trouble passing his class. So I said, well, I can help you. I said, this sounds really interesting to me. So I started studying dendrology
Oh my gosh.
to help him pass.
Oh, that's interesting. That explains some of your sculptures.
Yeah. So again, growing up, I would always find myself when I needed a break or didn't even realize it was a break I needed, but I would find myself like sitting beneath particular trees.
Yeah.
But I never gave it much credence, right?
That's why you drew them.
That's probably why I drew them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, at Mount Alto, I worked and studied with him. I was quizzing him. I said, yeah, I know you can do this. I know you can do this. And he still flunked out. He said, you think you're so smart? I'm going to give you the test and just see how well you do. I aced the test. Right? Meanwhile, I'm flunking Bi-Sci 1.
Yeah.
But I'm acing Dendrology 1, which I didn't even go to class for. So that was a pretty funny thing. And I often reflect on the thing. You always have this sense, well, not always, but oftentimes somewhere in your life you feel like nothing's working out the way it quote unquote should.
Right.
Only to realize later that it was working out
right
exactly the way it needed to. Yeah, it was all on track. It was all perfect.
And so what did you do after that first year of being in a forestry school?
Transferred to main campus quickly.
Yeah. And in that time you transferred for the art department or?
Well, when I first told my parents I wanted to go to art school, my father said, as most people did in those days, said, that's a crazy decision.
I bet.
You'll not spend that money, because I had to borrow all the money to go to school. He said, you'll not go in debt to be an artist. You'll never pay it back. And I said, that's really what I want to do. My mother said, you were a born teacher. You'll be a teacher. So I said, okay, well then I'll be an art teacher.
Yeah.
They went along with that. So I decided I'll be an art education major. So that's what I was. And Penn State gave me an excellent education as a teacher and not such a great education in terms of art, especially for someone coming from the background I did, knowing absolutely nothing.
Right.
So I went to main campus and got a real art class and loved it. But again, I had like 10 weeks of every medium, and I was like, just enough to maybe whet the appetite. But the one class I did totally love was sculpture. And I sculpted a bust of my boyfriend. And
not the guy from the forestry in New
No, he flunked out. Okay. He stayed in Western Pennsylvania, sweet as he was. But I loved sculpting that bust. Just loved it. And it had a really, really keen likeness. I said, I really like that. But then, of course, things take a different course. And it was many, many, many years until I returned to sculpture. But that was my college education.
So what year do you graduate from Penn State with your educational degree, your teaching degree in art?
75.
1975. So you were there in about 71 to 75.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was, you're part of the Vietnam War too. Penn State's not too far from Kent State.
Yep.
You remember all that stuff going on? Yeah, I bet, right?
I do.
How did that affect you?
Yeah. It really didn't. At that time, I wasn't socially active. I wasn't keeping up, I guess, with what was happening in the world so much. I was more focused really on my studio studies and what I had to do to try to do a good job and graduate.
Yeah.
And I ended up graduating, with a very high GPA, which amazed me.
Mm-hmm. Well, you actually could.
Do you have that name correct?
Study, not just in the bus. You actually could study before a test.
Yeah, actually, it did. It amazed me. I said, I can't believe I'm not only passing, I'm doing well with this. It was like crazy. I did, however, continue to always feel inferior in the studio classes, but it didn't stop me. I still just kept plugging along and learning what I could. And
so you graduate in 74, and then you go to get a job as a teacher?
No, I actually graduated in May of 75 and got married in June of 75.
Okay, so that changes
And
things.
my husband was a graduate student, so we needed to stay in state college. And I was not able to find a teaching position. So I took a position in a flower shop. I was hired to water the plants and ring up the register and that kind of thing. I thought, well,
fix the petals.
It smells nice. I like plants.
Yeah.
So it seemed like a good thing to do.
Sure, of course. It's very creative.
And I was there about 2 weeks, and I kept watching all these arrangements go out. Thinking, God, they're just awful, right?
Yeah.
Thinking, how many years have they done this? Somebody just points to the picture in the catalog and you make it. How hard can that be? And I made an offhanded comment to the owner of the store. Oh, you think you're so smart? Great. Tomorrow you go in the back room. We'll see how easy this is. And I went in the back room the next day and he was, okay, Betty, we're hiring somebody new for the front room. So they started teaching me all the ins and outs of technical, parts of, what you have to do and can't do to, doing casket sprays and weddings. And
that's right up your alley for your sculpture, though.
It was right up my
flowers
alley.
that you do. I mean, it's...
Yep. I became a trained floral designer by working for them.
Wow.
It was perfect.
And how long did you do that job?
I did that job for 2.5 years. And then I got a little bit bored. No, I got a lot bored because, again, it was a very old family-run business. And I wanted to try different things. Right. I was like, no. They'll show you the picture they want. That's what you're getting paid to make. And while it was okay, once I learned everything, it was just like a cage. Yeah. So then I took a position at the reference library at Petit Library. And that was fun because you learn so much. And
you could read.
Every minute was something new, and you never knew what somebody would ask you, and you have to find the answer. It was really fun. And then we moved to Atlanta. He took a job. He graduated, took a job in Atlanta. And we moved to Atlanta. And again, I applied for teaching positions, couldn't land any. So I ended up being a floral designer for a JCPenney store. Was
that more creative? Did they give you a little more leeway?
They did, but it was not working with fresh flowers. So I missed that aspect. But it was okay. And then while I was doing that, I decided, I'd really like to try cake decorating. That makes sense. I started taking studies with Wilton Enterprises and went through all of the steps to be a certified Wilton cake decorating instructor. So I was teaching cake decorating. So I did all these little things,
that's
that were
total
creative.
Art. I mean, making cakes and designing cakes is completely creative.
Yeah.
And it's also sculptural.
Yes.
As are flowers, by the way.
Well,
those are three-dimensional objects as well.
There was a short period of time when both of my daughters were very, very young, where I was doing part-time jobs, and one of them was I started my own business doing custom cakes. And I would often sculpt things that would sit up on the cake or,
right.
do like a sheet of cupcakes so I could use them to form different things. So I was sculpting in cake and frosting.
I can totally see that.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, you were getting to itch that creative need, and you're finding these jobs that fit that.
Or they found me, sort of.
Whatever, somehow you ended up there. Yeah. Most people don't go, I'm going to be a cake designer.
Yeah. Well, and when my first daughter was born, we were living in Atlanta, and I started my own business doing silk and dried flower arrangements. I just worked with interior designers, and I could set my own schedule and be with the baby.
Right.
But soon after, we moved back to Pennsylvania, and I had the second baby, and that's when I was doing the cake decorating, and I also started teaching Parks and Rec children's art programs on the weekends. So always kind of still dabbled in things.
Yeah, you were still finding that. And so how long did you do that to your next kind of epiphany?
Well, my husband and I divorced when the girls were really, really young. So I was very quickly a single mom.
Yeah.
And very quickly needed to find income. And again, it was middle school year, so I knew it wasn't going to happen with a teaching position. And so I really essentially took the first job that came, which was selling office furniture. And again, knew nothing about sales other than ringing a register, JCPenney's in the flower shop, which wasn't really saying much about sales.
Right.
But I decided I can learn. So I took that job. And when I was doing that job, I brought on ITT as a national account. So ITT, in the process of that, offered me a job to work for them instead of selling furniture to sell telephone systems. It was more money, and I felt like we needed more money, so I said yes to that.
And you're not afraid of work because
I'm not afraid of work.
That's all you've known your entire life.
Thankfully, I'm not afraid of work.
Yeah.
So I decided, well, I can learn this, and boy, did I hate it because it's all this technical stuff. It's just like the worst, right?
Yeah.
I love being with all the people. I love meeting all the people. I love the freedom of not being in an office, which would have made me crazy. And so I did that. And then another interconnect company recruited me to help them open a branch. So I moved. They offered me even more money. So I went with them. And that really was, the stress levels were really high, mostly because I wasn't enjoying what I was doing.
I'm sure.
And I was giving presentations to CEOs, boards of directors. And these are like, multi-million dollar proposals. It was big stuff, right? And for some reason, it didn't scare me. I mean, I just did it.
For one thing, you didn't care.
Yeah, probably.
What's the worst? They fire you? Okay, I'll find another job.
I didn't really think of it that way at the time. I did feel a keen need to feed my children, but I know what you're saying, and that probably was some of it. I didn't take it internally very seriously.
Right.
It was a job that I needed to do, so I did the best I could, and I enjoyed the relationships I built more than anything. So I did that, and then when I realized that I really wasn't happy with that stress level, and I didn't really feel like I was living with integrity with myself, I got a job with the local PBS NPR station. And I started doing underwriting credits and recruiting underwriters for TV and radio. So that was a little more creative in that I could try to find the right fits.
Yeah, for the programs.
And I would be responsible to write the script so that it would meet all of the guidelines so that we could air it the way I wrote it.
Right.
And still address the needs of the companies they'd be willing to underwrite it. So that was much better. Yeah.
And are you making any art at this time when you're doing any of this? Are you sculpting or drawing or anything?
Nothing.
No. Okay.
I mean, I'm doing little things like decorating cakes for the kids' birthdays.
Yeah.
Always having flowers in the house of some kind, maybe not arranged in any special way, but always wanting to have them around. Those little things, but mostly I was outside of the art realm.
And what year would have this been that you start the PBS job? You graduate in 74 or 75. You have 2 kids, you get divorced, and you're back in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, I think I went to PBS in 87.
Okay.
Or 88.
So 11 years after you graduated. Okay.
And then I married the second time, and I moved 45 minutes away. And I also had started, when I was working for PS, I decided I really wanted to go to seminary. And so I went part-time to seminary and worked full-time with the girls. And then I got married the second time, and then my husband lost his job and seemed, he was very challenged to find a new one. I was offered a scholarship to go full-time to the seminary, and I turned it down because I felt like I needed to find a job, and I felt like I needed to find yet a different job, because at that time then I was commuting about 50 minutes each way to work, and it was really starting to wear me. So I decided, geez, you got a degree to be a teacher.
Right. Maybe
how about you use it? Right. There's a novel idea. Yeah. So I don't know where I had the courage to do it, because now I've been out of that entire realm 13 years.
13 years with it.
I had no idea what was really happening in the schools anymore. But I have 2 sister-in-laws who are school teachers. And the one in particular was very, very supportive. She said, I think it would be a great idea. Just apply everywhere and just see. You never know. I said, that's right. You never know. So I did. Sure enough, I get an interview.
Right.
So she talked me through, I said, got to get me up to date. What's happening in the schools. What's going. She was really, really helpful. I also went and I visited. I asked a lot of questions, a lot of contacts that I had, saying, who's the best art teacher in elementary art that you know of in the county? I need to visit their classrooms. So I did all of that before the interview. Went to the interview, got the job. I was shocked. Really? They're going to hire me? I don't know what I'm doing. But I was excited about it. So I taught elementary art to 750 students in 2 different elementary schools for 2 years. It was a long-term sub position. And I essentially transformed the art program for the school. It was super fun. Learned more than I taught those kids, but they loved it. I had parents come into art class. I had, every moment filled with kids wanting to be in the art room. And we did all kinds of cool stuff.
And you get to create all day long, too.
And I got to create with the kids.
Yeah.
It was super fun. It was super fun. A lot of work, but it was super fun.
And so you just did that 2 years?
It was the long-term sub position.
I see.
So when it ended, then I applied throughout the county again for another art position and surrounding counties, and I couldn't find anything. And I even had some school teachers saying, gosh, I so wish we had a position for you. We've heard all about what you're doing and, calico, and we'd love to have you.
Right.
But if you just hold out for a year or two, I'm sure something will open up. I'm like, yeah, right.
Wait 2 years.
So
good luck.
In the interim, just as that was ending, I took a couple part-time jobs for the summer while I was looking around to kind of get us through. And then I'll abbreviate the story. Reconnected with my first husband, the father of my daughters, and we remarried.
Okay.
And relocated to Tucson, Arizona.
Ta-da.
Interestingly enough. Ta-da.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And that's a switch.
And that's a huge switch. Yeah. And the girls at that time were 11th grade and 9th grade. Tough time to move them across the country. Yeah. The youngest one was very excited about it because I remember her being on the telephone during that time, talking to one of her friends. She goes, my mom has a new boyfriend, and guess what? It's my dad.
Yeah, I'm sure that was very exciting to them to have that stability brought back into the picture. The
older daughter was more of a mindset of, we've done fine without you all these years. What are you doing showing up now? Right. That's an 11th grade attitude, right?
Yeah.
A typical 11th grade attitude. And who could blame her, right? Yeah. But she was still gracious, but she wasn't as keen on it as her younger sister. Right. She's like, let's wait and see how this plays out.
Right.
So we moved to Tucson, and it was the first time since I was 11 that I didn't have a job. My job was to help my daughters acclimate to a very new environment, help me acclimate to a very, very new environment.
Right.
And just adjust on it. And it was interesting because I felt ready for that break. It's funny because once I got the break, I realized how much I needed one. Didn't really realize it, I don't think, before I got it.
Yeah.
How tired I was.
Yeah. And it's a whole new environment. I mean, it's I'm sure in some ways incredibly thrilling.
Oh, yeah.
Just everything's different. The colors are different. The cells are different. The temperature's different.
And because I didn't know anyone.
We have mountains.
The desert became my new best friend.
Yeah.
I just walked and walked and walked. And early on, I don't even remember where I saw it, but someplace I saw an advertisement for a class in Native American hand building in clay. And I was like, that's what I want to do. So I signed up for it. And that's what started the whole deal.
Sculptor.
I just started digging my own clay in the desert. And
what year was that you came here?
We moved here in 94, and it was 96 when I took that class.
Yeah, so you took off pretty quickly in the sculpture world once you did that.
Well, I worked just with the clays, and then very quickly I began, having a lot of interest. Friends and I was saying, I want to buy that. I went, well, I didn't know I had a bit. So then I started a small business, and then I was doing lots of intricate designs on red clay with colors, and I was, tried, firing things in the pit. I tried everything. I was just playing with the clay. And very quickly, I no longer had time to go dig my own clay. It was just crazy busy.
Yeah.
And I was spending hours day and night, I remember we'd be working at home, and one of the girls would come and say, Mom, you do know that the entire house is dark except the room you're working in. What are you doing? I said, I'm working.
And you were making fired clay pots?
I was making fired clay. Yeah.
And were you doing an outside kiln kind of thing, or
I was doing kiln? Well, I signed up after that class. Then I signed up for a Parks and Rec class in the northeast part of town. Or the northwest part of town, and I drove there once a week and essentially used their slab roller and their extruder and loaded up the trunk of my car to give me clay that was ready to work with for the week. And I had a marvelous, marvelous teacher there. I sculpted the first vessel that's in my bronze Tree of Life series when I was taking that class. And I remember taking it into class and unveiling it because I would take the finished pieces back and they'd be fired there because I didn't have a kiln yet. Well, I had a kiln, but I only had a low fire kiln. And I remember uncovering it, and all the students, wow, that's like amazing.
Yeah.
How'd you do that? What clay pot did you use to do that? And I said, well, I used rod spot. And you can't do that with rod spot. And the teacher, she was just marvelous. She said, teaching moment, class, listen up. She didn't know that.
Yeah.
And it was just wonderful because I said, no, I didn't. It's my favorite clay.
Yeah.
It's the one I like to touch. And she said, keep touching it.
Yeah.
And that's what she told me. She was, keep touching it. It's your clay. Just keep touching it. You do whatever you feel called to do with that clay. It's yours. And I did until they changed the formula, and then things shifted a bit. But it was a great, great moment And I think a really great teaching moment for the rest of that class is.
In a weird way, maybe one of the first really where everybody's looking at you as the bright star too, you think, in a weird way? I mean, the teacher's saying, look at this. All the students are going, oh my God.
Well, they were all telling me, like, you've got something here. And I was saying, yeah, really, it turned out great. And I still didn't get it. You know what I mean? I still thought, wow, yeah, this one did turn out really nice. And I did that one. I attributed it not to me doing it. It was around this whole other thing that was going on at the house. I had been to Pennsylvania and come home. It was in the summertime. And I had this Palo Verde tree that I was in love with by the kitchen window. And when I came home, I realized it had been struck by lightning, badly struck by lightning, like cut in half, burn marks. It was nasty. So I called the arborist right away, and he came. He took a, he goes, there's just really not much hope for this tree. Because essentially, I'd have it cut down. And I said, no. I need you to tell me how to save her.
All right.
You don't understand. Right? Cutting her down it's not one of the options we're going to talk about. I need you to help me save her. He said, well, you could do this. And he gave me some, I forget what, some kind of a solution in a bucket that I had to put on different spots for you. And you can try that. He said, but, I said, okay, I'll try it. Thanks very much. So he leaves. So for about a month, I'm doing what he told me to do, but I'm also sitting under her and I'm giving her Reiki several times a day because I was a trained master Reiki practitioner at the time. So I'm giving this tree all this Reiki and, working with this vessel that we were just talking about that I took into the class. And I'm scraping, and the whole time I'm scraping it to smooth it, I'm sending this, these prayers and meditations to the Palo Verde tree because, I just feel her, right? And my heart is hurting because I really want her to live. And so that's why I named that first piece Miracles, because about a month in, and just as I was sculpting the trees on that vessel, she showed signs of new growth. So I called the arborist back and said, you got to come. He said, well, I'll be. He said, this is nothing short of a miracle. He said, I don't know what you did, girl, but keep doing it. So I said, I know, it's great, right? He said, this is nothing less than a miracle. I said, there you have it. That's the name of the vessel, Miracles.
Yeah.
So,
is the tree still around?
Well, we sold the house.
And of course, they cut it down right away.
Well, when we sold the house, my husband and I were getting divorced for the second time. Yeah. And he was working in, I think he was in China at the time. He worked out of the country a lot. But he was in China at the time, and I remember him being really upset because I said, well, we have somebody that's really interested, and part of the contract I put in, they cannot cut down the Palo Verde trees. Are you nuts? So you can't put that in the guy. I said, I already talked to the husband.
Yeah.
He is in agreement. He promises me he will not cut down the Palo Verde tree. I said, I can't sell the house if they won't protect the Palo Verde tree.
That's so awesome.
It was just funny, right? So... And the wife was kind of like, whoa, she is a crazy one, right? Yeah. I'm not sure I want to buy her house.
Right, I get it.
But the husband, very quietly, he was a musician. I took him aside and I said, here's the deal. Here's the story of the life of this Palo Verde tree. And she's just really, really dear to my heart. It would just crush me if anything happened to him because I knew they intended to build a studio for him.
Yes.
And one of the options will be to get rid of that tree to make the passage between the house and the studio more accessible. And I drive by to check. She's still standing. She's looking good.
And did they put it in the contract?
They did. Well, he just said, we don't have to put in the contract. You have my word. And he reached out his hand. I said, great. I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then I buried something there, a little personal token to protect her. So, yeah.
I just lost a Palo Verde tree, interestingly enough, a big one. And I couldn't figure out why it died or whatever, but I brought in somebody who goes, no, it's not going to make it. I was like, what are you going to do?
Sometimes it happens.
I didn't have you there to come and give it healing.
Should have called me to sit with it and give Reiki. No, sometimes it's just time.
There's a big tree and it just went like that. Boom. And I don't know why. Maybe it got hit by lightning, possibly.
Didn't have Palo Verde beetles or anything?
I don't know what happened. Yeah. I mean, it was, by the time I saw it, it went from very healthy to dead in just a very short period of time. So, Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, people don't realize how important trees are.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
no.
I mean,
I live in the house I live in now partly because I fell in love with the tree in the front yard.
Yeah. No, they can mean, I rarely take out a tree.
Yeah.
There has to be a really
They can be
good reason.
messy and they can be, a lot of work, but The gifts they bring are, in fact, I have this, there's a really ancient, beautiful barked mesquite tree in the front of my house. And then there's this more typical mesquite tree by the front door. And I named the majestic one Miss Jane so as not to intimidate Sir Charles.
So you at this point you're doing well with just firing pottery, making pottery, and then you go, okay, I should make this into bronze.
Well, I was selling a bunch of work in two-back.
Yeah.
And I couldn't make it quickly enough.
I see.
And I wasn't really making. I was paying for my costs, but I wasn't making enough money to really support myself. And I knew the marriage was not going to make it. So I think, okay, so next season is up, kid. What are you going to do?
Right.
And I was trying not to get panicked about it, but to just be more thoughtful and say, okay, this is a chance to change direction because now I'm in my late 40s.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, okay, well, just keep doing what you're doing and be meditative. Because every time I would scrape and scrape and scrape, it was great meditative time for me. And I had 4 vessels lined up ready to take down to two-back for delivery. And it just struck me. I just looked at them and I said, oh, I'm using the wrong medium. They need a longer life.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought, well, bronze would be a longer life. And then I realized, I know absolutely nothing about bronze. I didn't know the process. I didn't know one thing about lost wax casting. I didn't learn anything about it in college. So that meant I knew nothing.
Right.
So I thought, well, I could do a little research and just see, because that felt like a pretty clear nudge. And that's pretty much the way I work, is when the intuition comes, that
you listen
don't
to your
argue
voice.
with it.
Yeah.
Sometimes I argue for a while first, when it seems really, really crazy, like bronze, are you kidding? And my husband and I were still together at that time, and I mentioned it to him. He said, what are you, nuts? And I said, I don't think so. And he said, no, I do. I think that's a crazy idea. That's an expensive, crazy idea. So we divorced, and I realized
and the clay
that there was a foundry in Tucson.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, how about that? So I made an appointment to go visit them, and I took Miracles. I decided not to take that piece to two-back because that's the one that I really felt that kind of voice more clearly through. And I was very, very connected to it. So I said, this is the one that wants a longer life, and I want to give it to her.
Mm-hmm.
So I went down there, and they said, absolutely, we can cast that in bronze. And I said, well, teach me how. I said, well, you don't do it. I said, well,
and what did you say when
are you sure I can't do it?
it?
Are you sure I can't do it? Because, I kind of taught myself everything else, right?
Right.
I have this assumption that you give me the formula, I get the equipment, and I do it. That's all, right? I figure out what I need to, rearrange to make it possible. By that time, I had turned, my dining room into a clay studio, my office into a clay studio, and the bathtub and the master bathroom into clay drying boards, right? So, the environment really could be shifted, I thought. So she said, no, this isn't something that you do. This is something you pay us to do.
Right.
So I really started totally on first base. And if I had any idea of how involved and how expensive it would be, I probably would not have gone ahead.
Yeah.
But ignorance sometimes is bliss.
Yeah.
And
it is expensive.
It's very expensive.
Yeah.
And when I realized how expensive, I thought, well, how are you going to make this work? Because you can't just live off of selling one bronze vessel.
No.
That's not going to be okay.
Plus you have to get galleries.
Plus you got to get galleries. And there was that. And I think, and this gallery that I was working with, two-back, she was very, very lovely, but it wasn't the kind of gallery that would sell bronze fine art.
Right. And you have to sell them for a price that's enough that you can pay all the foundry stuff and still make profit, and the gallerists make money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I had a lot to figure out very quickly. They were really great to work with, and I learned a lot about the basics, but the challenge there was patina.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, I was not falling in love with patinas. I was resisting it. And the first one was okay because I wanted it to look like that original clay vessel.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote about this in a book I was playing with that I never did anything with yet. But it's really a significant piece because it really visually shows that bridge between clay and bronze.
Mm-hmm.
Because I wasn't yet able to let go of what I felt it needed to look like. So I tried to make it look like the clay and the oxidized firing. And
That's
the first
too,
three
right?
pieces in that edition
yeah.
look exactly like an oxidized clay firing. You would, without touching it, you'd swear it's clay. And then it was an edition of 15. And so the balance of the edition, I then played around with getting some color on it. But it took me a long time. And I worked with somebody independent here in Tucson when I was still working with that foundry. But very quickly, they couldn't produce it quickly enough. And I realized I need a different foundry. And so I started exploring, and then I started working with one in California and worked with them for about 12 years. And that's where I was able to really learn a lot more about the process, because I would go for a week or two, and they allowed me to work in the foundry hands-on at each level. And I worked very intimately with my patina artist there. It was such fun.
Why do you think you needed that intimate relationship with the patinas? I mean, because it's not typical for sculptors, and maybe that's why, because you weren't your typical sculptor. I don't know. But, you know, it says something about you to me that you had to be involved in the entire process and have it perfect.
I don't know, maybe a control freak? I don't know.
I don't know. No, maybe. I mean, there are a lot of artists that I have that are very precise and do not give control of anything. They can't. And I understand that. I get that. And they're really, really good at what they do.
I think it was the fascination with the alchemical process of watching those changes. And also, on my work particularly, sequence is critical. And trying to figure out the right sequence to make it work was always a challenge waiting to be met. I remember I worked really, really closely with this one patina artist in particular at the foundry in California. And every time I'd show up with a new piece and I'd have, you know, the drawings they had done and the, you know, to try and visualize for him what I saw the final product looking like. And then it's a little bit more like, you know, I don't think we can do that, right? And I said, I know that you think that right now. And I said, I know it feels that way, but we're going to do it. And he'd just shake his head. He'd say, well, all right, I'll give it my best. I said, look, we're going to do it, Caesar. I know we're going to do it.
Right.
And we'd work and work, and then, no, that's not it. But you know what we learned today? And then we'd evaluate what we did. And it might take us a full week to figure out the sequence that would work for that particular piece. But we'd always get it.
Yeah.
We would always get it because I refused to give up.
That says a lot for the foundry, actually, that they would allow that.
It says a lot for the foundry. And he's right there with Ray Redfern.
Yeah, give me the name of the foundry.
It's Masters in Metal in Oxnard, California.
Yeah, because that's...
He was incredibly lenient with me, working really closely with that patina artist. And I took a lot of their time because I was there often for more than a week.
Yeah.
Because if it was a really challenging piece, I know it would take us that long to nail one, and then I couldn't leave without a second one to make sure we really have it.
Right.
We're fine tuning things, or we'd cast like 4 to start, so we'd have a couple to play with. And usually 3 of the 4 would be halfway done and have to be blasted and started over once we found the way that was going to work. So there's a lot of time in that, but it was always such a welcome challenge because I just kept holding that vision. I look at the piece and see what I thought it was going to look like. And sometimes it had to shift a little bit, but usually we were able to get it. And we might have to figure out a different way to do things. I know one of the great little things that we did is we said, well, what if we just tinted rubber cement and we mask this while we do this part? He's like, that's ingenious. So I run off to Walmart to buy rubber cement and just little things like that we would discover along the way. It was great, great fun.
It probably helps that you didn't have the formal training in some ways because you could look at it as an outsider in a different way, just like when you worked with the clay, you're not supposed to, right?
I didn't know anything. So anything was okay.
Because your patinas are very beautiful and unique. There's no doubt about it. You can tell. You know, they stand out on all the pieces. You go, oh, wow, look at the patina. People say that. Yeah. They'll literally go, look at the patina of those flowers and those,
and there's a lot of masking and then, going back and reworking the surface of the metal with my patinas, which is why I spend so much money on them. Is some of the pieces are in that patina room for days. Yeah. And it's what's required. Right. And then there's so much detail that they also need time to walk away from it completely and come back with fresh eyes to be able to see where they've missed the mark.
And that explains to me why you go, please wear plastic gloves when you move these bronzes around. Yeah. Each one of these, you've gone into intense detail and effort to make it look a certain way
Yeah.
And to get a scratch.
Well, sometimes, you can send it back and they can fix it, but sometimes it's really disappointing because depending where it happens, I know what it's going to take to fix it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not so much as just touching up that little spot.
Yeah.
It sounds really easy, I know, but
no, I get it.
Yeah, now and then it's not quite that easy.
So we're talking at this point about circa 2000-ish when you really start to take off as a sculptor.
Well, it's actually 2004. 2000 is when I first started exploring bronze casting, 1999, 2000.
Yeah.
2004 is when I had, I think, 3 or 4 pieces, and I started approaching galleries.
Mm-hmm.
And I started in Scottsdale.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, I thought, well, since I don't know anything, I'll just call and ask for an appointment in the summer when they're not busy.
Right.
For time to just, if they would just let me pick their brain, because I don't know what I'm doing, right? So I went up there and what's the name of the gallery? Oh, it's one of the big ones.
Trailside Legacy.
Trailside.
Yeah, okay, Trailside.
It was with Trailside.
Yeah.
And she agreed to give me 30 minutes in the summer. I said, that's so generous of you, and I'll be there. So and I took 2 of the pieces just to kind of show her what I was working with and all. And talking to her and picking her brain, how's this process work? And she's doing, will you just like wait here for a moment? She leaves and she goes, we actually would like to represent the work. I was like, what?
Well, it's very different too.
I was like blown away. And that's what she said. We've never seen anything like this. We would love to be your first representing gallery. I'm thinking, well, that's kind of like starting at the top, which then I thought, well, that's the only place I really can afford to stop. By this time, I'm, 49 years old. I'm thinking, yeah,
right.
I better start there or give it up, because I need to live on this. So that's how I started. The work did not actually do super well for them, but it gave me confidence.
Yeah, and I can see why.
Really
they were
needed.
much more kind of cowboy genre, and this is not that.
Yeah.
Even though we have that and native and that, we also have modern sensibility, and we have different things. We just we're not. It's a different fit for us than it would be for them. And then you ended up really, I think, in like one of the perfect galleries, which is Ray Redfern Galleries in Laguna Beach, because he has all these fantastic early California artists as well as a few living artists. In fact, the only 2 sculptors I think he has, I also represent.
Yeah,
Mark Rossi and you.
Well, we had one other for a short period of time. I don't know if he still represents her, but she did very different work that was more about the Montage Resort when he had the small gallery there.
Yeah. And I'm sure he did very well with you, I imagine, because it seems like it would be a very good fit.
Yeah, for many years, he sold a lot of work.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, a lot of work. In fact, the first time I left pieces with him, I had flown there. And by the time, I think I left 4 or 5 pieces with him that he purchased outright. By the time I got home, I had a phone message from him. How soon can I get more? They're all sold. I was like, whoa, okay.
And was it when that started happening that you go, okay, I think I can make this?
That's when I said, okay, I got 2 feet in here now for sure. I think I can make this work. But I was still working all by myself, trying to do everything, trying to set up the books, trying to set up. And at that time too, I was like, I got to have more space. I was in a really tiny studio. So I rented a studio. It was 1,200 square feet, moved everything in there. And this is also kind of a funny story about moving into that kind of space, because growing up, our space was so tiny and that was my comfort zone.
Right.
And I don't think I ever realized how much so until I moved into that 1,200 square foot studio. And I don't know how to work here. I mean, I had office space, but then I had all this huge studio space. Like, I can't find a comfortable place to work. And I had purchased a very nice pedestal and all. And I kept moving it around and moving around. And the first month I was in there, every morning I go in and I just sculpt my index finger to point the way. Like, I don't know where to start. I don't know how to do this anymore. So I sculpt my index finger, toss it in the trash, and I know what to do next. And it was a really fun practice. And I often say, God, why didn't I save all those fingers? It would have been a fabulous piece of art. But it was process. It was all process
So you would sculpt a finger.
I'd sculpt my index fingers, and then I would just hold it, and then until I would know what to do. Every morning, I just sculpt my index finger.
Probably gives you time to think and really
relax.
Yeah, and you're also
in I'm in the environment.
Exactly, and then it just comes to you like a dream, basically.
Yeah. It quiets all the chatter.
Yeah.
sort of like writing in a journal so you can clear the path,
Yep.
to really see more clearly. So I did that as a practice. And when I hired my first employee, I remember her saying, "Why do you always work in that back little corner?" I said, "It's my zone." It's just my zone. I know you don't understand. There's lots of other options in here, but that's my place.
And would you work for long periods of time when you would go into the studio? Would you do?
Oh, yeah. I would say from 2003, until probably 5 years ago, I'd work 7 days a week, 12, 14 hours.
Yeah, I can see that,
It's what it required. And then
And you're picking the eggs.
And I had 9 galleries, and
Yeah.
and I was just trying to stay afloat and trying to do the shows, and I was traveling to the foundry, and
Right.
it would be 2 or 3 trips every month. So I had to work those hours to get it done, essentially, and then writing about the pieces. And
Yeah, that's another thing that you do is that you often, I don't know if often or always, write, a story basically.
always.
Yeah, with
Yeah.
the
And
the piece.
the writing really feels like a marriage to the piece. To
Yeah.
me, it's like the piece isn't complete if you're not considering the
Gives
writing.
it the context.
And yet, I know a lot of people, the Redfern Gallery, for one, he really didn't care at all about the writing, which was fine. I still offered it, gave it.
Right.
But for a lot of purchasers too, the work speaks for itself, and that voice is all that they want. So that's
Yeah.
fine. But for me, the creative process, I can't really separate the two.
And did that start with that first Palo Verde bronze that you did, the writing?
It actually started before that, when I was creating the clay bowls and vessels. For some reason, I just felt drawn to write about it because I find myself putting all these symbolic animals and symbols on them, and it meant something to me. And I thought, well, I should just share that. So they would be much shorter, but I would always write something about them. And people would always comment on how much they appreciated that.
And it's not complete unless you have that.
It's not complete unless I have that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
The
interesting.
piece isn't finished unless I speak about what it taught me or what I learned, what I heard, what was coming with it. And when I'm sculpting the vessels, I would always just be listening and always have paper right there and jot down, oh, this, oh, she's about this. And then I look it up in the book and learn more about the plant or the tree or something, saying, well, of course, and then something else would come later in the process. But it was just sort of that dance between the two. So,
yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it's your context of the sculpture, and without it, it's not complete.
No. And sometimes I even, would say, like, I don't know if I create so I have permission to write and to articulate what it is that's going on.
Probably
I don't
both.
know which comes first, but they both need to be there. One is not complete without the other.
Can you finish the writing before you finish the piece? Or
No.
You have to finish the piece before the writing can be.
Tidbits that I'm jotting down. But when the mold goes to the foundry, that's always when I would start the writing process. And then I would never share it or confirm it or finish it until I saw the piece finished and confirmed, yes, that's who you are.
And that's when you could finish the writing at that
point. For
point?
the poetry, then that's when I would, And that's when I would have the first finished piece cast in bronze, and then I would copyright the writing and the piece.
And you can't move on until that's done with that sculpture, right?
No.
Yeah. I get it.
I mean, I just can't. I'm still working that one. I'm not working in clay, but I'm still working with that piece because I'm not quite finished with it yet.
Have you just tried writing poetry?
I have from time to time. I don't feel like I'm much of a poet, and yet I've written all these poems.
Yeah.
I'm very clear that the vessels and the writing, I don't know how to do any of that. I really don't. I'll finish a piece and somebody say, wow, I really like that. And I know I did it. I mean, I remember doing it. I know these hands did it, but I also know it wasn't me. I just can't tell you how clear I feel about that. And the same with the writing.
Something comes from within.
And in Vino Veritas, the grapevine vessel, this is the only time it happened this clearly. But this is a great example of that. I finished the vessel, covered it up, and my habit was always to cover it at least for several days and then go back without looking at it at all for several days so I could see it again. And I was in one of those final uncoverings, and I thought, and then I put, I stick little pins where I needed to give more attention first thing in the morning. And there were no more pins. And I covered it up. I said, I think that's it. I'm going to give you one more look in the morning, but I think that's it. And it had been a really long day. I was really tired. And I go home and I don't even know if I ate dinner. I just remember being really, really tired then. I lay down in bed and the poem starts coming.
Mm.
And I thought, that's it. That's exactly what she is. I'm thinking, I have to remember that in the morning because that's exactly what the piece is about.
Mm.
And then 2 more lines come. I'm like, yeah, that's it. That's it. I mean, you really should get up and write this down because you might not remember. It's so perfect. I can't forget that. I'm like, you're going to forget. 2 more lines come. I'm like, all right. I'm out of bed. So I get up. I stumble to the keyboard and I type down the first, I don't know, it was like 3 lines, 4 lines by then. I type those and they just keep coming. And they keep coming. And I'm thinking, I don't even know how to really explain it. It's not like I was hearing the words, but I was hearing the words.
You're feeling the words, actually.
I just knew what was coming next.
Right.
So I just quickly put it down, didn't worry about punctuation, spelling, anything, went to sleep. Woke up in the morning and thought, let's take a look. I thought, all I had to do was correct misspelled words and punctuate. I'm like,
right.
That's it. It's done. Now, I've never done one quite that easily or effortlessly, but it's that same sense that just
yeah. Well, your subconscious,
works.
It was probably just grinding and grinding and grinding on that piece, and you're getting closer and closer and closer. And to finish a piece, you have to have the poetry story to go with it, and then you literally vomit it out.
Yeah, let's just get it done, shall we?
Yeah, it's time, it's there, and it needs to go. Yeah, I understand that. I've had that in writing before, where I've had to wake up and write stuff. It's just like I have to do this.
Yeah, it's just right. It's exactly what you've been looking for, and it's
That doesn't surprise
and
me.
also that you will not recall it in the morning.
Probably not.
Yeah.
No, you should get up at that moment and do it.
I now have a little recorder app on my phone.
Yeah.
That I can quickly,
do it.
So I can just say the things in there. Say then I don't have to get out of bed and I won't lose it. But I don't know why that fight is so hard to just get up.
Yeah. Well, we're sleeping, and you work hard, so.
But so that was a very sweet experience, but it's never come quite that fluid. Yeah.
Well, I remember a client came in with one of your pieces, or they actually didn't come in with it. They said, "Oh, do you know about this artist?" I go, "No, I don't know who that is." And they go, "Well, come outside and I'll show you." I think they just picked it up at your studio. They go, "She's here in Tucson." And I went out and they had a beautiful little vessel. And I go, "I don't know who this person is." And they're in Tucson, Arizona. And they go, "Yeah." And I go, "You should call her." And I was like, "Okay, I will."
Yeah. Well, they had just been at the studio and purchased several pieces as Christmas gifts, and it was their first visit to the studio.
Yeah.
And while they were there, they said they were headed over. I said, he doesn't happen to represent your work, does he? And I think they found me through my ad in American Bungalow magazine.
Yeah, I saw that stuff there too.
Yeah. I advertised with them for a really long time.
Are they even in business anymore?
I don't think so, because they don't reach out to me anymore. And it was about 3 years ago I reached out to them saying, because I had been in the magazine every issue for, I don't know, a dozen or more years. And that's really how I grew my own collector base. It was all through advertising.
Yeah, I know you had done a lot, but you said you had at one time 9 galleries.
Well, and the other piece that I looked at is, I'd look at all these art magazines and say, yeah, it's all great, but why would I put my work right beside all the competition where it's hard to see?
Yeah.
Because personally, I can get drunk on too much work at one time. That's a personal thing, I know. But I thought, well, the work sits so beautifully in the magazine. Yes. It's published so beautifully.
Yeah, that was a good.
Why wouldn't I try it? And it was a good thing to do.
And how many galleries are you with now?
Only 3.
Yeah.
You and Broadmoor and Redfern.
Yeah, good.
And I have to say, just the 3 of you.
Yeah. Well, that's probably about perfect for where you are in your career and what you're doing and what you're wanting to do. And
yeah, well, for the climate right now, it feels like it's right. And I like those 3 galleries.
That's important.
And that's really, really important.
It is really important.
Yeah. And I know that they have integrity, so that's even more important.
Yeah.
And it feels perfect for right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those all seem like good ones.
And I no longer have employees, so
that's also nice.
That also shifts things quite a bit.
Yeah, you don't have to work as hard.
You don't have to work as hard, and you make different decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe you're also allowing yourself time to go, okay, I don't have to work 12, 14 hours a day anymore?
Well, no, although right now I'm really in the mode of discerning what comes next. Like I know something comes next, but I don't see it yet. So
seminary school?
We'll have to wait and see. No, it won't be seminary school. No, my couple of years there, and it served me well. But again, that was a necessary piece, you know?
Yeah.
Going to the forestry school.
No, I get it.
Was a necessary piece. Learning to present, helped me immensely when I approached galleries. I didn't have any fear at all.
Yeah.
And I knew how to do it professionally. I knew how to put myself in their place. So you don't just walk in.
Yeah, you were very confident. I remember that when I dealt with you for the first time. I was like, oh yeah, she knows exactly who she is. She knows exactly what she wants. She understands her brand, and she has an amazing portfolio of art.
Yeah.
So this will be an easy one to work with. We'll just, no, in a way, I love working with real professionals. It's much easier.
Oh,
then the expectations are on me.
Well, I think I've done it very differently in many ways than a lot of artists, but mostly it's because I didn't have any shirt tails to follow.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't set out to think outside of the box. I just did because that's where I found myself. And I tried to connect with a community of artists in Tucson early on, and I just didn't find that connection. I found a lot of people very interested in art, but didn't find a lot of people actually professionally living on the art they made. Like,
right.
I didn't feel they were doing it at the same level that I intended to do it. So I ended up being pretty quiet, and I was so busy outside of Tucson that I didn't really feel like I had any time.
Right.
I was just trying to keep my head above water.
Even though the Parks and Rec really set you on your,
Absolutely, they did.
Yeah, the road that you're here.
And Martha Hammond, the teacher of that class.
Yeah.
Remarkable woman.
Yeah, shout out to her.
Just remarkable woman.
So what advice do you have to people? You were an art teacher. You've done all these different things. What would you say to those artists that are out there who maybe, in their early 40s have always wanted to do it and, think they have it? And what do you tell them?
I say you do it.
Yeah.
You say, why not? That's a better question.
Yeah.
Why not?
That is the right question, actually. Yeah. What's holding you back?
Mm-hmm.
And
that'll be your key.
Is it ego? Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's afraid. I can't succeed. I'm told I can't succeed.
Well, then the second question, if that's the case, is why are you doing it?
Yeah.
Why do you want to do it? Is it to please someone or to
please yourself?
Yeah. Or is it because you want to express something that's gurgling up inside of you?
Right. And I think if your expectations are to fill the creative need, those are the right way to be doing it. Mm-hmm. If you're going in and saying, I can do this as a profession and make money at it, I think if you don't have that creative drive and, that you have to do it, that it makes it much more difficult. It's like trying to write books because vampires are in. I'm going to write about vampires. I know I can make money, and I've been told I'm a pretty good writer. No, that's not going to work.
Yeah. Lots of times I was advised to just do something simpler. You don't need all that detail and all. You can make a lot of money.
Right.
You can make so many more pieces. I was like, I understand. It's not what I do.
This is the lady who's writing a poem about each one. That's just wasted time to tell you that. Yeah. Completely, you don't understand her motivation in any form or fashion if you think that's going to be what clicks. No.
Yeah. I just wasn't able to heed that advice. Just couldn't do it.
Yeah, thank God. You don't do art. First of all, you don't do art to get rich because you won't. Mm-hmm. And you don't do art because somebody tells you to do it. It won't succeed. You have to do it from somewhere within. And clearly, Carol, you have that.
Well, thank you.
Yes. So it's been a pleasure having you on, even though I've known you for a very long time. And it's always nice to hear the backstory. And it puts it totally puts the work in perspective for me. Even though I understood, you don't understand until you listen to this stuff. I mean, it all makes sense.
Everyone has a story. We forget that.
Yeah. Well, also the granularity of your work just got a lot more deep for me.
Oh, good.
And I'll be looking at things like cakes and flowers. This is great. Those are what made you who you are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, very good. Thank you for coming. It was easy, right?
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
It was easy.
We've been trying to do this for like 2 years, I think.
I know.
Because of COVID. And I was like, no, I can't do it. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. I don't want to do it right now. So it's nice to be able to get back into the studio and actually spend whatever time we spent together. Over an hour, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was lovely, and I'm grateful. Thank you.
Yes. So you can go to our web and see her work, Carol's work, and you can also see it. We'll put it up on the podcast. We'll put up a couple of these different images on the podcast of people who do that, including if you'll give us the image, the one of the Palo Verde tree.
Oh, sure.
And the piece that came to with the poem at night.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, those would be great to see. And maybe, just maybe, we might even get the picture of the hen.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Yeah, I know, but
yeah,
we'll see.
I have it.
I know you do. I totally understand if you don't want to share. I get it. I wouldn't share you my art when I was 13.
Yeah.
It wasn't very good.
Yeah.
So, all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark.
All right. Bye-bye.